Thanks once again for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. As you know, we had kind of a wild trading today, and I guess the trading day is almost over, but I kind of wanted to dive into a review of George Soros as well as the conflicting data on the 39K calls that are out there that expire at triple witching on Friday of this week. So, a reminder, please take time to like and subscribe. Join us on Patreon if you'd like more information on investing and better trading. So, today was a strange day for Tesla stock. As you know, it kind of opened flat. The news had come out that George Soros and his fund had picked up 240,000 shares, and that there was a filing for this that just came out for shares that were purchased towards the end of the year. Now, just to give you a process sense, when you're buying that many shares, you typically will do a filing for your intentions, and then there's somewhat of what's called dollar cost averaging, where you're buying those shares, but you're buying them over time as a way to reduce the potential that a large buy might push the price of the stock usually up, because they can see the volume that's coming in. So it's likely that when he did that purchase, he probably had his people send that trade through several different trading houses to reduce the sense that there was one big whale that was buying, and have potentially that trading being front run. So as you saw, once this news came out that he was a buyer, it created a really interesting situation. So usually what happens is, as we've discussed on numerous occasions, you kind of get analysts reviewing a stock, doing their upgrades, and then places like Fidelity or some of the other, T. Rowe Price, some of the giant funds will actually respond to those analyst upgrades, and we can kind of see a general cycle of updrafting for a stock. Well, when we look at George Soros today, another sort of segment of the investing public would be George Soros is a billionaire with his own, family money to invest. So I was a little surprised that he had to do filing in this manner, but it is a lot of shares that are being purchased, so I guess it makes sense from that angle. So why I wanted to do this today is that anybody who an announcement can cause, let's call it between 5 and a 10% increase in the stock price of a company, is pretty impressive. And so how can so little shares for a giant company's number of share units cause such a stir? Well, the answer is something I call slight embarrassment. So what happens is that there are managers for private funds like Soros is, and there are managers of money for public funds. Soros became one of the largest fund managers for other people's money. That's institutions of all sorts globally. And then as he got rich, he sort of stopped managing their money and started just managing his. The fundamentals of the investing process, which we've encouraged you to learn by reading One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch, still remains the same. Everybody's looking for growth stocks at excellent prices, typically buying below the growth rate of the company, because as that growth rate continues, there's no doubt that the stock price will rise and continue to rise. So having Soros do a purchase in this fashion, it's my belief that it's the same equivalent of having an analyst upgrade done on Tesla. There's a lot of funds where, some people might ask you some really bad questions. They'll be like, look, I'm paying you $20 million a year. And if I'm paying you $20 million, George is making, call it 100 to 200 million a year easily, perhaps 500 to a billion. I want my firm fund to be running numbers like George. And how can we run numbers like George? Well, the answer is quite simple. buy the same stocks he's buying at the same time, and our fund potentially runs numbers as good, if not better, than George. Particularly, I wouldn't call this front running, but I would call this sort of back running, because there's still a gap between when you're doing value investing, there's still a gap between what the current value of Tesla is really, which is somewhere around 240, 250, and the current price of the stock. So as that gap closes, there are a lot of funds who are required to know this stuff well and be in with both feet while it's still a cheap stock versus buying it when it's expensive. So therefore, I see some fear on the part of large managers that they really might have missed the boat if they're not heavily in the situation with George Soros or with George Soros, or they should have been ahead of George Soros. So basically, it's a strong vote of confidence to have a successful manager of his repute by Tesla in that quantity. As you know, he went from 150,000 shares, added about 240K, so he basically tripled his position. This also provides greater cover to those managers choosing to accumulate Tesla shares. Now, there's a possibility that, well, what if they buy and Tesla stock price suddenly crashes? Well, if you point out that one of the best money managers in the last 100 years is a heavy buyer and so are we, and then you look through all that data, they can justify their position with no problem. As you heard from Mr. Black in our last show, there's not a mega cap company with Tesla's growth rate selling that cheaply. So we're getting a look from different entities that are confirming that Tesla is a great value. There's sort of good news and bad news. The good news for hedge funds or investment managers, they can buy more with confidence. The bad news is that people like Soros can trigger other managers to dive in before the magical 240 price is broken, and we switch from a cheap growth stock to a fully priced growth stock based on recent numbers offered by Tesla. In the long term, things are good for Tesla. In the short term, there's the issue of the 39,000 calls at $200 a share, and the managers who wrote those calls figuring out how to cause them to expire worthless by triple witching this Friday. So, as you all know, the third Friday of each month is triple witching options expiration day. So, yes, you have options that expire every Friday, but there's a number of different types of options and indices that expire on this coming Friday. And so there's a huge number of folks who have been making money on call options at the 200, having purchased them for fractions, for just a few dollars when it was at 120, 125, and now it's over 200. And some folks have made some great money. So the goal of these managers is, can we get the Tesla stock price below 200 by Friday, causing those options to expire worthless, and therefore we make money on the calls that we've sold. So there's a war right now, as you can see, between long-term managers who are acquiring to hold while the stock is in a great price position versus the hedge funds or managers who are trying to hold the price back temporarily. So I believe with the 39,000 calls that are out there, probably more now at the 200 price and at the $5 increments above and below, that there's going to be a push starting Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and into Friday morning to get this thing back below $200 a share. For me, there's this thing we've seen from Tesla for the last several years, where if Tesla is $10 above, so for above 10, more like 12, when we have close of business on Thursday, it's exceedingly difficult to get it back below 200 but possible. But if we're sub 210, more like 2.5 or 207 as we saw last week, the ease with which they could take it back down to that 200 level is a no-brainer. In fact, we'll cover it more when we get to this on Thursday, but there's also a momentum process where you can leverage bots and other things to drop the stock into the 180s in a sort of fast way as we head to the close of business on Friday. So we look forward to seeing what happens. Congratulations on those of you who've been making money as it's been ticking up. I think that we could end up with a war that results in the stock popping into the 220s and it not coming back down for those managers to recoup losses and may have to pay out even more as the stock continues to rise above 200. So stay tuned. We will cover the war further, and a congratulations to those of you who've cleaned up here. For our health tip today, we're going to include some video of core training that was featured in the New York Times. Hope you enjoy it. The challenge is how to maintain flexibility as well as healthy body training at the same time. And core training is a big deal and highly recommended that you consider adding it to your repertoire. Thanks once again for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, au revoir, lahitro, khoda hafez. Stay ni hao ma, konbanwa, Japanese, heido, Swedish, namaste, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.